Hey, I'm Tommy. Welcome to Lightroom Photography Workflow. Now, this is my personal workflow that over the years I've kind of developed to be like a tried and true tested method that allows for importing photos, culling photos, editing photos, and then eventually out processing them. What happens here is it's a very detailed list of how the photo is going to go through the entire Lightroom process so that you can consistently have good backups, you can have a good editing workflow, and you can manage your files so you're not overwhelmed with the workload that comes in every time you come back from a photo shoot. We all love taking photos, and then a lot of times people have a really hard time on the editing side because the amount of photos that we took is such an overwhelming list, right? So this is that series to kind of help manage those photos while you're in Lightroom. And this is part one. Part one is the Lightroom photography workflow of just importing the photos into our whole thing. So without further ado, let's go ahead and go to the computer and import our first set of photos. All right, so we're on the desktop here, and before I even get into this, we're gonna talk about this is just my workflow of how I import photos and how I process everything in Lightroom. Feel free to just take little pieces of this if you don't want to do the entire workflow that I'm doing, but this is my tried and true method that I've been doing for a while now. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. There's a lot of ways you can play around with like a duplicate sample size to kind of see what method works for you without losing any of your important files. But we're just going to go through a sample for myself to showcase what I like to do in my workflow. So first things first, before we do anything, you want to look at every one of these hard drives. If you notice, I have like several different kinds of hard drives. I recommend about 3 different kinds of hard drives. You're going to want a portfolio hard drive where all your finished edits go in after everything is said and done. You want an archive hard drive, which is where you kind of just dump files in just in case you ever do want them. So like this is my portfolio, but this is my archive, which we'll get a little more into detail with that as we go through the culling process in the next video. And then you want an incoming catalog. Now what the incoming catalog is it's literally just its own individual catalog in its own individual hard drive. The reason why this is so important is Lightroom has to look through all of the photos that exist in that catalog, and it takes quite a bit of time. It actually can slow down your system if you have tons of other photos that aren't important to be focusing on at the time. So just have your incoming in its own hard drive with its own individual catalog, because then you'll be able to just put in those, focus on editing those, and then we can move them out into the portfolio hard drive later, or the archive hard drive, depending on what, where they're going. So that's the first thing I would say to do. And if you notice, we just have nothing really in here. I have my mid-month dump where I just dump all the random photos that are not shoot related all into one folder. And then I have this little extra one of where I didn't want to remove those from that catalog just yet. So that's our first step, is we're actually going to look at my SD card, which for me, I shoot Canon. So this is called EOS Digital. When I open this up, you're going to see the normal dialog where you have these extra folders. Miscellaneous is just, I don't know why that folder is there, honestly. But DCIM is what you're going to be paying attention to. You'll see the folder is 100 Canon, and we have all our sample images here, right? Now, if you look at the sample image number really quick, it'll say like 9455. This one says 8777, things like that. All that is it's counting upwards as you take the shot. When it hits 9999, the very next photo is going to be 0001, and that might show up in a folder like this. So you might actually see this on your SD card when you're unloading the photos. So just keep that in mind if you're like looking at this folder and you're trying to move stuff in when you go to import and you can't find everything. It might be in a second folder because it's rolled over on the 10,000 shots that it took. This, for me, actually happens a lot during aircraft photography because I'll take thousands of photos during an air show, and that 10,000 mark can get over very quickly, and then you'll see that. So, but for now, we just have the one with the little sample size. So now we're ready. We see all this here, and we're ready to take them from this SD card, which is all these files here, and put them into our Lightroom catalog. So here we are. We have the incoming catalog open, and right now there's not really anything in here. There's like 3 little photos that I didn't want to get rid of yet because I just wanted to play with, and then there's nothing in my mid-month dump because I haven't really taken much photos this month. So that's all we have here. So to import these photos, we're going to go to File, Import Photos and Video. Now also, as a little tip, you'll see on the side of a lot of like important commands, you'll see these things. Well, it's not there. Okay, we'll just show these ones. You'll see these little shortcuts. Those are just the hotkeys for keyboarding. So if we want to do anything on the keyboard, we can just use those keys to get the same commands. So in this case, import photos and video, we're going to hit Shift, Command or Control, depending on what computer we have. Command is Mac and Control is Windows, and then I, and that's how we import without having to do File this. That just makes it faster if you remember stuff like that. But there's a lot of shortcut keys to do, so it might take a lot longer than that to remember everything. So anyway, we're going to hit Import Photos and Video, and we're going to be presented by this giant import dialog. Now, right now, okay, that's not there. That was my old example. But right now, if you look at this, it has automatically my SD card selected, and it has every photo. The reason why behind this is if I actually uncheck include subfolders, you won't see anything. There'll be just this no photos found with the include subfolders button. And all that does is when you check this, you're going to look at these other folders where the photos actually are. This is helpful with that 101 Canon as well. If you include subfolders and you just click the root DCIM part of your SD card, you'll see all the files that are displayed inside that folder. So that helps as far as bypassing that 101 Canon folder if your photos did roll over. But we could do eject after import if you want. That just ejects the SD card, and then we'll say include subfolders for our check mark. So we have selected this folder, and here's all our photos that we have for the example. Now, there's been talk a lot of like you can individually remove files like this by just taking the check mark off so they don't import onto the hard drive. Supposedly that helps like with the integrity of your hard drive because your hard drive doesn't have to write and then rewrite data over and over again for photos you actually don't want. You can go that route. I prefer to keep everything checked. In fact, I'll even hit check all to make sure everything is checked, because hard drives these days are pretty reliable and they don't really have that much of a problem. Plus, we're going to be backing up stuff so much, and you don't want to accidentally skip over a photo that you thought maybe was bad in this little preview window, but it actually is pretty good, and now you lost that photo because, you know, you unselected it when you went to go do whatever you were going to do. So we're going to have at the top of the screen here, there's several different options that you can have. You have a copy as DNG, and what that does is it takes the native RAW file from your camera and turns it into Lightroom's actual specific RAW file converter. It just makes it more compatible for different RAW converter programs, because Lightroom has to reverse engineer the RAW file that each camera manufacturer has. So I don't normally use this feature unless there's like a brand new camera that just came out and Lightroom hasn't been able to figure out how to read the extension that it came out with. For example, Canon R5 uses this CR3 format, but like a 5D Mark III used a CR2 format. So Lightroom had to go back and kind of make this compatible with their program. And if you just bought a brand new camera and it didn't have that compatibility yet, that's where this comes in handy. But otherwise, we're going to go into copy is what we're going to do and just keep these raw extensions. And so this is all we want to do for this middle panel is we have our SD card selected, included subfolders, we have everything checked, and we're on copy. Now we have this huge little menu on the side here. Now there's all sorts of cool little things, and while it looks a little daunting, it's actually to help you move forward faster when you're actually going through file management later. So this is very useful to pay attention to here. There's different settings. First off, we'll check Build Smart Previews, make sure that is checked. And what it's going to do is it's going to create a small little compressed file of your photo to showcase on the library module in Lightroom. This allows you to kind of go through the photos really quickly for when we're doing like culling, like we're going to show in the next video and stuff like that. This makes it really helpful to do that. You can have different sized previews based on what you want too, but keep in mind as you go down this list, it gets slower and slower because the previews get larger and larger. So if you're really worried about like, you know, scrutinizing the sharpness of a photo in the library module, you're going to want to choose standard or 1-to-1 previews, but they will slow down your Lightroom catalog. But normally minimal or embedded in sidecar work the best to move quickly through the photos. I like to choose embedded in sidecar because what sidecar is it'll generate a second file called an XMP file, and it's just the data of what you did to the photo. So any metadata you added, any edits you added will go into this sidecar file, and that'll help speed up your workflow as well because Lightroom doesn't have to try to put everything into the embedded. It'll have this little extra tidbit, and you could even export that sidecar if you want just to move the edits somewhere and not worry about the photo himself. So I always choose embedded in sidecar. It's a good optional thing that doesn't take very long to build that smart preview for. So that's what we're going to do there. You can have don't import suspected duplicates on in case there's more than one file on this SD card. And then this is really, really important, okay? Make a second copy too. So you want this checked, and you want to then specify by clicking on this here, you'll get this little dialog, and we're going to go straight into our incoming catalog, and we're going to just go ahead right on the root of the incoming catalog, make a new folder and call this backup sample. Create. There it is. There's the folder that we're choosing, and now it's going to make all of these photos copied over into that folder. This immediately makes a backup for you. That's wonderful stuff. I recommend having 2 to 3 backups in total. So or 2 to 3 copies in total of your photos. So the first copy will be this SD card. You're not going to delete anything. In fact, having eject after import causes you to not worry about anything. You just have the card eject, and then do not format that card until the next time you're going to use that card in a new photo shoot. This way you always will have the files on that SD card in case you ever need to go back about this process again and re-import everything. This second copy here will take these photos and make a second copy. So there's your second backup, right? And then the third file copied backup is the actual photos that you're going to play with in the incoming catalog. So you have 3 of the same file across that board. This way, if anything goes wrong, you have a way of backtracking through your files and you don't lose the photo. All right, so next up we have add to collection. Now, collection's great, okay? You can add a new collection, which we'll call sample example, just because that's fun. Sync it with Lightroom. And what this will do, we'll create that now. What this will do is it'll take all of these previews that you had built before, and it'll make those previews go up into the Lightroom Creative Cloud. What that does is there's another program. This is called Lightroom Classic, but there's another program called Lightroom or Lightroom CC or Lightroom Mobile. I heard it called all different things like that. But it's just Lightroom by itself. And what it does is it'll allow you to then look at these smart previews on your iPad or on your phone. And then you can manipulate them however you want. You can edit them, you can rate them, you can delete them, whatever you want, and it'll reflect that onto this Lightroom Classic album. This way you don't have to sit in front of the computer the whole time. You could just take your iPad and go, lay on the bed or sit on the couch, go in the pool like I like to do when I go through and I actually rate my photos. So adding to collections is very helpful, just if you know you're not going to just be on the computer the whole time, you can make this little collection here. So that's the whole file handling import. This just makes everything really safe and secure and able to move fast with what you're doing. Next up we have file renaming. Now file renaming, you could do this however you want. There's a, you can rename files however you want. There's a little template here where you can choose things like custom names, file numbers, sequences, whatever you want to kind of really change the name of this number here to whatever will be best for you when you're organizing your files. I always just choose date and file name, but look, you could even come down here and hit edit and then have all of this extra info that you could import into the example to do what you want and create that as a preset, so that you'll always have a custom name and file number sequence for whatever you're going to do as it's importing. This also will reflect up here on this second copy backup, which is really helpful as well. I choose date file name because I don't mind the file name, it's fine. I just want to put the little date in front of it. So in this case, the example that they have here is there's your 2023, August 13th, and then the file name. All right, so now we're almost there. We're at apply during import, and we have things like develop settings where I can actually take presets that I created in the develop module and save them and apply them as these photos are coming into the catalog. So what's kind of nice about this is, a good example of that is I have this 25 sharpness only setting, and all that's going to do as these photos are coming in, Lightroom for some reason has now a new default where sharpness is 40 for me, and if I just put in develop settings that I want 25 for sharpness, it'll just make all of those 25 sharpness instead of 40 sharpness. So you can pre-develop stuff. So say these giraffe photos are just too dark, right? I want them a little bit brighter. You could build in the develop module a preset that just increases the exposure a little bit or the shadows a little bit, and then save it, and then you could select it here. It's very helpful if you're really trying to fast edit stuff. I like to leave it off just because I can manually edit later, and that's fine. Next up is metadata. This is the metadata that goes into your photo when you import the photo. So there's a whole bunch of stuff there that you can go through. In fact, we'll show the case what this is. It has all sorts of stuff, basic info, camera info, all this stuff that you can put in if you want to. For the most part, what I do is just, here, let's actually say done to this one. Hello, there you go. Don't save it. And we're going to select 2023. And what 2023 does for me is it's a metadata preset that I made, and all it does is add like my name, copyright, and my website on there. But it'll put it inside the embedded information of the photo, which we'll show in a little bit here once we're done importing. And then to continue with that wonderful metadata stuff is we can put keywords down. Now keywords on the import module, this is just to help you find the photos faster when you're archiving later. So for example, I don't want to put giraffe here in this section. The reason why is when I come down here, there's a bird and there's a woman. If I go to apply during import, it's going to put the word giraffe in here. So I don't want to do that across all of these photos. So what I like to do for this one, before I do specific keywords later when I'm out processing photos, is on the import, I'll put a generalized set. So in this case, this is my sample set. So let's say sample images, right? And every set of words that you do is, this is the keyword until you hit comma, both of these words are one keyword. So each keyword set that you do can be a keyword, but you can also do images I liked here. And that's all one keyword. So now we have 1, 2, 3, and this big sentence, 4 keywords that we're going to generally apply to every single photo that we're putting in. And that's all that is for that. So this is really helpful if you have like a photo shoot that you did. You could say beach photo shoot, blah, 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 or studio photo shoot 2023, and then have like a nice little keyword set there for the generalized bit. And then later you can put stuff like beach photo shoot for yoga or something specific if you have multiple different kinds of shoots. Or if they're all the same, you could just put them all there the same. So now we're in destination, and destination is everything that this SD card has is going to go somewhere, right? So what I like to do is I ignore this, even though this is kind of nice. You can include subfolders, make subfolders to kind of help split up your photos. But I just do that later in the culling process, so we'll get into that in the next video. But for now, here's our incoming catalog hard drive. This is where we want the photos to go. So I just have this photo dump here and this other photo here. So I don't have a folder specifically for this sample yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the root of my regular place where the photos go, right? And I'm going to right click that and create a new folder. And we'll just it'll bring me back to this thing. I don't want it in backup. I don't want it in the catalog file itself, right? So I want it here with the other 2 folders that are here. So we're going to make a new folder, and we're just going to say example size thing. I don't know, example size thing. Create that. Here's example size thing. That folder is what we're choosing. So now that's highlighted, that's selected. What this is saying is this SD card here is going to put all these photos that we checked into this folder, and it's going to apply all of these things that we selected over the time. So now we're able to hit import finally. It's going to take a couple seconds. You'll see this copy and import photo button or little progress bar up here. If you minimize this, there's an icon at the bottom of the screen on Lightroom that'll actually show you your progress bar too, so you can go about doing whatever you like to do. Go get a coffee, jump in the pool, whatever you want to do there. And it doesn't take very long to do this, but we'll just kind of wait it out for this. Okay, so it's almost done. We're importing all these different sets in. And what it's doing is it's going from the earliest date all the way to the newest date. It's applying our date stamp to the thing as we did when we said date file name. And you'll see here this little icon here that's 2 different arrows. That's the embedded sidecar icon saying that it's putting the previews over the top of the image. So that's all it's doing. In fact, if I look down here, the icon's not there yet. It's the original photo is in, and then in a couple seconds you'll see, boop, there's the arrow, and that said that it built the preview for it. You also get a little smart preview bar progress because it's got to go back through and make sure that all the previews are good. So that bar will come up after everything is officially in the catalog. It only takes a few seconds. It's not really that long. Another icon you'll see is this little tag looking icon, this like shopping tag icon, and that's photos have the keywords that you applied to it on the import. See, here's my image, images I liked here, sample images, YouTube. Those are the images, those are the ones I had. Images I liked here was that sentence thing that we put up last, but if you see, it puts it alphabetical order for you, which is pretty cool. So once all of this is actually going in and we're making this selected stuff happening, you can come down here and look at every photo's metadata. Let's just click on a giraffe one, and you'll see it applied my preset, so that means my copyright information's in there, which is what I wanted, right? It tells you all the detail that the camera put on for the photo. So in this case, I shot this photo at 1/2000 second at f9, with ISO 800. Not surprisingly, it's a little dark in my opinion, but we could play with that when we edit in the third video of this series. So then there's one more thing that it did, is it added two different kinds of icons that have to do with that whole sync to iPad Lightroom stuff. And that's this right here is the collection. So it made the smart collection that goes up to Lightroom. There's my importing example right here and sample example. I think importing example was the last time I tried to do this video. Sample example is the collection that we built. So that is just saying that it's in a collection somewhere down in my collections panel. This icon up here, these little double arrows, you can see the double arrows with dots on it too. The double arrow icon means that it's being synced into Lightroom up here in this cloud thing. So it's going to the Lightroom cloud so I could see it on my iPad. The dots mean it hasn't gotten there yet. It's on its way. So if you click up here where this cloud is, you can click this cloud and see that it's syncing. I could stop that syncing at any time by hitting pause, because that'll actually help speed up stuff. Or I could just hit that when I'm ready to sync whatever details I'm going over. But that's kind of it. That's the whole importing process. Hopefully this was a lot faster, but I tried to put a lot more detail in on this second run. That's why this importing example is here. So I did a first run and it was way too long to describe all this. So this is a second run. Hopefully it's a lot faster to showcase this. One more final tip before I go is this detail stuff that you see here. In fact, let's just for funsies, we'll put a little 3-star rating here. You could see the stars, you could see the flag, whether or not it's been flagged, you could see all these fun little icons on the outside of the photo. You can get rid of all of those with a keyboard shortcut. You hold Shift, hold Command, and press X, and it'll remove all of that detail around the outside. For whatever reason, it just keeps the sync to Lightroom icon. But this can just toggle on and off those details if it's too overwhelming for you to look at. That's also in the drop-down. If you go to View and you come down to Grid View Style, Show Extras, that's the same thing. Okay? So that's just how you toggle that on and off. And we are actually ready. Now we have all of this example size imported into our catalog, ready to go. It is currently syncing to Lightroom iPad, which is fine. We can leave that on its own to do whatever we want, and we can actually work on these photos now. So the very next step in the very next video will be culling the photos, where we actually flag and rate them in the method that I like the best. And that's it. So this section of the Lightroom photography workflow is pretty detailed, but I hope you enjoyed it anyway. Take a lot of notes, kind of absorb this, and then we'll continue on with the next part in the Lightroom photography workflow in the next video that I post up. And as we just go through this, I want you to play with these kind of settings. I want you to practice it for yourself, see what works best for you. You could just verbatim copy everything that I did in this note, and you'll have a very consistent Lightroom workflow that works for any scenario that you're gonna put it through. But you could also just take samples of this as you want and put it into your own method that may be even faster than what I'm doing. Once you get the hang of all this, it is definitely something that works very tried and true, very fast, very efficient, to where you could always find a photo and you can always recover your files if anything should go wrong. So that's kind of it for this. We'll see you in the next video. If you did get anything out of this, by all means, leave a like, drop a comment, maybe ask me more questions in the comments below, and I could answer them either in future videos or just in the comment section right here. And I hope you got something out of this. There will be a lot more parts to this Lightroom photography workflow, and then even after this series, we're gonna do a deep dive into everything. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you wanna see more content like this. Also, if you wanna see anything that I do on the outside with this Lightroom photography workflow, go ahead and follow any of these Instagram pages right here. I have a portrait one, a nature one, and a aircraft photography one. Since they're so consistently posted, I made 3 Instagrams for them. And then also I have a website, which I'll put at the bottom of the screen right here. So feel free to come say hi, give me a follow, whatever you want to do, and I will see you in the next section of our Lightroom photography workflow.